The Golden Spike is something that I've always heard about in Utah. The two railroads came together at Promontory. 2019 is the 150th anniversary of the Golden Spike, and so we thought it would be really cool to make this trip from Salt Lake to Promontory to see the reenactment and find out more about the Golden Spike and Transcontinental Railroad.
Many descendants of Chinese railroad workers are here today. This is a far cry from 50 years ago at the Centennial at Promontory on May 10, 1969, when my mother, Mary Lee Young, was the only such descendant present. What the Chinese achieved for the first Continental Railroad was epic. The superhuman effort of a vanguard of Chinese towing locomotives and railed 28 miles over the summit, and the building of 15 tunnels in the Sierra Nevada mountains. Scores were killed in explosions, and in the horrific winter of 1866-67, work crews were buried by avalanches. Then, in the spring of 1869, out of the mountains into the desert of Utah, Chinese went from 6 inches a day building Summit Tunnel to laying 10 miles of track in one day. It took the incredible organization of wagons and cars and carts and horses and equipment and the teamwork of Chinese track layers and 8 Irish rail handlers. This record-setting feat on the road to Promontory is unequaled in history. The trust and cooperation between workers with a common purpose was a zenith of the human spirit. The centennial was a grand moment to celebrate the monumental achievement the Chinese were part of. Yet, why were the Chinese denied their rightful place in history at the 100th? Why was Philip Choi, president of the Chinese Historical Society, kept from making a presentation on the program? Why did the Secretary of Transportation, John Volpe, state in his keynote address, "Who else but Americans could chisel through miles of solid granite? Who else but Americans could have laid 10 miles of track in 12 hours? Because the contribution of Chinese to the Transcontinental was kept from national memory. The exclusion law of 1882 stopped the immigration of Chinese laborers and denied all Chinese naturalization to U.S. citizenship. In effect, for 61 years, the law excluded the Chinese from American history. Today, we take this opportunity at the 150th to reclaim a place in history, to honor the courage, fortitude, and sacrifice of Chinese railroad workers and their legacy in America, which belongs to all of us. It takes a village to build a railroad. We stand on broad shoulders, my ancestors and yours, those who fought exclusion and struggled for justice and equal rights. Let's be proud that immigrants make up America, so we can have this moment of solidarity today and fortify a milestone in U.S. history, hammering in the last spike. Done! Thank you.
Welcome everyone to the 150th anniversary celebration of the Transcontinental Railroad. We are pleased that all of you could join us for this iconic event that mirrors the famous celebration on May 10, 1869, when a golden spike connected east and west and united our nation as never before, as one.
Well, thank you, and good morning. What a beautiful Utah day as we gather to celebrate this significant historical event. And they got the wrong stuff on the teleprompter. Let's see if we can find it here. If not, I'll just start. Let me say again, welcome. We're honored to have you all here. We have some special guests here that are participating with us. Again, a remarkable event in not only Utah's history, but American history, which really changed, the West, the colonization, the way we did business here in the state of Utah, opened up the West in significant ways in which we represent. I don't know about you, but standing here today, I'm experiencing a little bit of deja vu. The feeling that I've had, that I've been here and I've done this before. I suspect many here share that feeling because so many of us have seen the iconic pictures taken of the completion of the Transcontinental Railroad here at Promontory Summit on this very day 150 years ago. That event, which took place on a beautiful spring morning on May 10th of 1869, much like today, was the world's first live mass media event. When Leland Stanford, one of the big four owners of the Central Pacific, tapped in the golden spike, the telegraph operator transmitted a one-word message to the awaiting world: done. And the nation celebrated. Liberty Bell rang in Philadelphia. Hundreds of cannons thundered approval in San Francisco, Washington, D.C., and from the courthouse to City Hall and Arsenal Hall in Salt Lake City. An estimated 6,000 to 7,000 people gathered at the Tabernacle on Temple Square. Chicago celebrated the biggest parade of the century, which was 7 miles long. And the shrieks of fire whistles and firecrackers on streets and in neighborhoods commingled with the songs and prayers heard in churches throughout America. Today, we are gathered once again on a beautiful spring morning at the same spot and with media present to commemorate and celebrate that momentous day. While we'll be hard-pressed to equal some of the celebrations that took place 150 years ago, and there we go. That was the first cannon shot, wasn't it? We are truly partying like it's 1869. I like my hat. There is certainly much that is worth celebrating in 2019. The Transcontinental Railroad helped transform Utah from an isolated frontier outpost into the crossroads of the West, which it remains to this day. It opened up the West for settlement, helped the mining and other extraction industries, and expedited the arrival of large numbers of immigrants to Utah. And it ushered in what is historians now call the American century. This anniversary is also important because we are finally giving those who did the bulk of the heavy labor their proper recognition. I'm proud that we have highlighted the contributions of the more than 15,000 Chinese laborers who, along with Irish workers, Mormon workers, Native Americans, and many others, built the Transcontinental Railroad. As we reflect today on the impact of this railroad on our country and on Utah, let us also look to the future. Like the visionary leaders and dedicated workers who built the Transcontinental Railroad, we must encourage visionary Utahns to dream big and to help ensure that they have the tools to make those dreams become a reality. We must also remember that as the Transcontinental Railroad shows us, even in difficult times of deep division and discord, the Civil War, great things can be envisioned and accomplished. So this morning, in the ranks and legions of admirers of the builders of the Transcontinental Railroad, I stand front and center and salute them for their great accomplishments. God bless their memory, and may God bless us as we strive to carry out their legacy by dreaming big, by working hard together to meet the challenges of our day. Thank you, and God bless you all.
To recognize the new designation of the Golden Spike National Historic Site as a National Historic Park, please welcome to the stage Congressman Rob Bishop, U.S. Secretary of Transportation Elaine Chao, U.S. Secretary of the Interior David Bernhardt, Senator Mike Lee, Senator Mitt Romney, former Senator Orrin Hatch, Utah Governor Gary R. Herbert, Utah Department of Agriculture Executive Director Luann Adams, Box Elder County officials, area ranchers, and representatives from the Utah Department of Transportation.
Spike 150 is about leaving a legacy that we want our children and the world to know that this country, with the help of thousands of immigrants, accomplished the seemingly impossible. The Transcontinental Railroad is a prominent symbol of the most significant achievement of the 19th century. It is that century's moon landing. The rail system shortened the trip across the plains that took months, and my ancestors had to walk every step of the way down to 5 to 6 days. To emphasize the importance of the site, of this site, where crews joined the east and the westbound tracks to create the nation's first transcontinental railroad, my Utah and Washington, D.C. colleagues and I have worked hard to expand the site's national importance. So I'm proud to say that on March 12th of this year, President Trump signed into law the designation in the National Resource Management Act that this Golden Spike National Historic Site is now a full-fledged National Historic Park. The Golden Spike join such other national historic parks as Lincoln's birthplace in Kentucky, American Revolution site in Boston, Independence Hall in Philadelphia, Lewis and Clark Trail in Oregon and Washington. The park's new designation provides opportunities to attract additional tourists and economic benefits to this part of Utah. This is a tremendous way to honor the lives of those who built the railroad and share with people its stories and what took place actually here. Now, it is with great honor that I have the opportunity of asking those up on the stage to help unveil the sign that is coming now in front of us. So if you can all join up here, every one of you, grab a piece. And when I count 3 going down, ready? 3, 2, 1, unveil the sign. So move over, Mighty 5. We are now the Super 6.
Please welcome Utah Governor Gary Herbert, President Russell M. Nelson of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, O.C. Tanner President and CEO David Peterson, and other Spike 150 dignitaries for the presenting of the Utah Spikes and the ceremonial driving of the Utah Copper Spike. The Utah Copper Spike.
And life-altering events in American history, and it happened right here in Utah 150 years ago. I'd like to thank the Spike 150 Commission for organizing such a fabulous celebration for all of us to enjoy and to remind us of this awe-inspiring act of human progress. To help mark the significance of this celebration and memorialize it for generations, the O.C. Tanner Company is pleased to present to the state of Utah the Utah Copper Spike. This spike was created in collaboration with Rio Tinto Kennecott, which donated 450 pounds of 99.99% pure Utah copper. I'd like to ask Mark Cameron from Rio Tinto Kennecott to come forward to present this beautiful spike, product of Utah's natural resources and craftsmanship, with what this event means to Utah and to our country, to our good governor, Governor Herbert.
Well, thank you, Dave. We appreciate the work. I don't know if everybody knows that there really were 4 spikes when they drove the Golden Spike. We know about that one from California, the Golden Spike. There was one from Nevada, and there was one from Arizona. There was a second, little smaller spike from California, but not a Utah spike. Yet, where did we join together? Here in good old Utah. So for the first time now, we have a Utah spike. It's beautiful. In fact, I think it's the most beautiful of all. And we want to thank O.C. Tanner, Rio Tinto. This spike truly symbolizes both our place in history as well as the history that we're making here today on May 10th of 2019. If I can just take a moment here to read aloud the inscription on one side of this spike. It says this, quote, "Great things are possible with vision, hard work, dedication, ingenuity, and collaboration. These are words for all of us to live by." This is absolutely beautiful and an amazing addition to the historic spikes created in 1869. Thank you very much.
Please take the first swing. Thank you, Governor Herbert. Lance Fritz, will you please come forward and assist in driving the spike? Thank you, Mr. Fritz. F. Ross Peterson, will you come forward and give the spike a tap? Ladies and gentlemen, we present to you the Utah Copper Spike.
I'm the Secretary of Transportation, Elaine Chow. Today, at the 150th anniversary of the Golden Spike ceremony, marking the completion of the Transcontinental Railroad, is a day to commemorate the contribution of railroads and the contribution and sacrifices of the railroad workers, including approximately 12,000 or more Chinese laborers, who risked everything to make the Transcontinental Railroad a reality. The Transcontinental Railroad was a tremendous feat of engineering, innovation, and manpower that was key to unleashing the economic prosperity of the United States for generations. It was one of the greatest infrastructure projects in our country. And within 3 years of its completion, trains could travel from New York City to San Francisco in just 1 week. Prior to that, travelers endured up to 6 months or more of dangerous travel by ship or covered wagons to cross the continent. The ability to move people and goods across the continent at much reduced time and lower cost led to explosive economic growth. The benefits were felt not only in the big coastal cities, but in the rural interior, which gained access to new markets. Within 10 years of completion, the intercontinental railroads were shipping $50 million of freight from coast to coast each year. The act of building the Transcontinental Railroad was transformational in and of itself. The government provided land and other resources to encourage private sector investments in the railroads. Innovation and planning guided the project. Standard gauge track was adopted on a national basis, and telegraph lines were built along the track right-of-way. Nitroglycerin gradually replaced the less powerful black powder when blasting tunnels through the Sierra Mountains. The railroad workers became so skilled that a legendary team of workers, as you have heard, built 10 miles of track in a single day. Today, we pay special tribute to the diverse workforce that built the seminal project. Civil War veterans from both the North and the South worked together on the Transcontinental Railroad, along with Mormon settlers, African Americans, Native Americans, and of course, Chinese laborers. Building from the east, as you can see from the trains behind me, the Union Pacific Railroad hired Irish immigrants, African American immigrants, newly freed slaves to lay track across the Great Plains. Building from the west, the Central Pacific Railroad hired 15,000 workers of which 12,000 or more were Chinese immigrants. These workers of Chinese ancestry blasted and chiseled their way through the rugged Sierra Nevada mountains, using manual hammer drills, pickaxes, and explosive. They dug 15 tunnels through pure, hard granite. Snow fell so deeply in the mountains that they had to build roofs over 37 miles of track so supply trains could make it through. The conditions were merciless, dangerous, and harsh. An estimated 500 to 1,000 Chinese workers lost their lives. But the Chinese workers persevered and played a key role in building one of the greatest infrastructure projects in the world. And their achievement is even more poignant in light of the fact that many of the Chinese laborers did not have the opportunity to bring their families with them or to become citizens of the United States. Many of their names are lost to history. Their families in China may never have known what became of their loved ones. As the first United States Secretary of Transportation of Chinese ancestry, I have the unique and moving opportunity to fully acknowledge and recognize the contributions and sacrifices of these laborers of Chinese heritage to the construction of the Transcontinental Railroad.
What a pleasure and an honor it is to be here with you today to celebrate the creation of the Transcontinental Railroad. Our celebration at Union Pacific started yesterday with the nose-to-nose meet of our two massive iron horses of today, the number 844 and the number 4014. I think maybe some of you were there yesterday. It took teams of amazing craftsmen to build this Transcontinental Railroad like it took teams of amazing craftsmen to build those iron horses and refurbish them. We celebrate that ingenuity, that hard work, that sacrifice. And it's the same kind of sacrifice that defined this great race to where we are today, that connected our nation. That was a story of not just the laborers, but certainly them. It also included the visionaries, President Abraham Lincoln, when he signed us into existence in July of 1862. It included the stories of the First Nations of America and how the Transcontinental Railroad fundamentally changed their culture, their lives, had significant impact. It's about the communities that were formed along our great railroad, first starting as steam stops, as water stops, and then growing into economic engines in their own right, and now sitting at the heart of our great nation. That endeavor, as you've heard over and over today, identified exactly what's achievable when a group of motivated and dedicated, diverse individuals put their mind to it and become one, in the words of President Nelson. And while that connection was finally complete here at Promontory Summit, that was not the end. That was the beginning. The creator of the famous golden spike had the wisdom to inscribe on that spike a prayer that was as appropriate on that day as it is today. May God continue to unite this country as this railroad unites the two great oceans of the world. May God continue to unite this country as this railroad unites the two great oceans of the world. That hope stands the test of time, and it's a prayer we would all be wise to reiterate today. Our company takes great pride in our history. It defines us. We think it makes us different. We think it makes us special. But most importantly, that history is a reminder of our awesome responsibility as stewards to continue to build this great nation and this great state. Thank you.
We welcome back to the stage. The Golden Spike National Historical Park reenactors will now perform a historical reenactment of the driving of the Golden Spike. This reenactment has been taking place here for 50 years, and some of these performers have participated in reenactments for more than 50 years, and some are the second generation in their families to take part. New this year, as part of the 150th anniversary celebration, the reenactment will open with a scene showcasing the workers who built the railroad. Performers of this reenactment include Sid Bottley, Raymond Chan, Jeff Chan, Terrence Chin, Joe Eldridge, Richard Felt, Jeff Jadfield, Dale Johnson, Louis Nahn, Ross Reeder, Curtis Roach, Richard Kwan, Shishan Lin, Jerry Nelson, Scott Nelson, Greg Neville, Kevin Strasser, Stan Summers, Corey Wild, Brian E., Dustin E., and Boyd Young.
This is Promontory Summit, Utah, an unlikely spot for the culmination of an undertaking that will mark the ending of the Old West and the beginning of the new. But they have come, the famous and the unknown, the wealthy and the poor, the laborer and his boss, the Chinese from the west and the Irish from the east, mingling with the local residents in a strange communion. The gathering is both festive and anxious, awaiting that moment of miracle when a common railroad spike, driven into an ordinary railroad tie, will link a continent. A gentle breeze is blowing under an almost cloudless sky. The thermometer on the shaded side of the Central Pacific Telegraph car registers 69 degrees. Above the babble of voices can be heard the soft hissing of the steam locomotives, which herald the beginning of a new era. A polished tie of laurelwood has been placed in its ceremonial position by the construction superintendents of both railroads. And then Edgar Mills steps forward, a wealthy banker and friend of the Central Pacific Railroad officials, steps forward and signals for silence. And so a nation, as well as the spectators gathered here, await as the drama of men's hopes, prayers, and dreams began to unfold on this 10th day of May, 1869. And you are here.
Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the officials of both railroads, the Union Pacific and the Central Pacific, I bid you welcome. We are met today to commemorate the completion of a project, which is a remarkable example of the vision, the determination, and the labor of thousands of men in the Union, which this day shall be consummated forever. We are assembled here to leave the ends of the earth, to join the raw riches of the American West with the finished products of the industrial East. We are also met this day with mixed emotions, with joy that in a combined effort and a common cause, the brains, the sweat, and the muscle of thousands of men have joined together under the guidance of Almighty God. But it is with profound sorrow that we remember and pay homage to the hundreds of men who gave their lives that we might stand here at this moment and share one with another this sacred occasion. Among those whose presence we are honored to acknowledge at this time include a number of railroad officials from both lines, in addition to those taking part in the ceremony. We also take pride in the presence of the 21st Infantry Band. They are the command of Major Milton Cogswell. We take pride in the presence of many great newspapers from our country. Among those dignitaries present include Bishop John Sharp, the Railroad Bishop representing Governor Brigham Young. We also have Mayor Warren Farr of Ogden. The beautifully uniformed band is from the Mormon 10th Ward from Salt Lake City. And now, to unite us in thanks to our Creator, may I introduce a man who has traveled many weary miles to be with us today. He is the Reverend John Todd from Pittsfield, Massachusetts. Reverend Todd.
From Promontory to the country. Bulletin. Already now, hats off. Prayer is being offered.
Our Father in God, and our Father's God, God of creation and God of providence, Thou hast created the heavens and earth. Thou hast also created all those who have been here and participated in this program. We give thanks for all the blessings that Thou hast given us, Father. And we ask Thy blessings to be upon us here assembled and upon Thy people everywhere, that peace may flow unto us as a gentle stream, and that this mighty enterprise may be unto us as the Atlantic of Thy strength and the Pacific of Thy love, through Jesus the Redeemer. Amen.
Promontory to the country. We have got done praying. The spike is about to be presented.
Thank you, Reverend Todd. At this time, it is my pleasure to introduce a fellow resident of Sacramento, Dr. H.W. Harkness, who will present 2 railroad spikes to Dr. Thomas C. Durant of the Union Pacific Railroad and Governor Leland Stanford of the Central Pacific Railroad. Dr. Durant and Governor Stanford will then place these spikes into holes that have already been drilled in the Laurelwood tie. But these are not ordinary spikes. Ladies and gentlemen, these are golden spikes made from pure California gold. Dr. Harkness.
Gentlemen of the Pacific Railroad, and those of you who have met with us, the last spike needed to unite the Atlantic and the Pacific by a new line of trade and commerce is about to be driven to its place. To perform this act, the East and the West have come together. Never since history commenced her record of human events has man been called upon to meet the completion of a work so magnificent in contemplation and so marvelous in execution. California, within whose borders and by whose citizens the Pacific Railroad was inaugurated, desires to express her appreciation of the vast importance to her and her sister states of the great enterprise which by joint action is about to be consummated. From her mines of gold has been forged a spike. From her laurelwoods has been hewn a tie. And by the hands of her citizens, she offers them to become part of this great highway, which is about to unite her in closer fellowship with her sisters of the Atlantic. From her bosom was taken the first soil. Let hers be the last tie and the last spike. And with them, accept the hopes and wishes of her people, that the success of your enterprise will not stop short of its brightest promise. This spike was donated by Mr. Frank Marriott, publisher of the San Francisco Newsletter. And in conclusion, I should like to draw your attention to this spike, the gift of David Hughes of San Francisco. On its head is inscribed the last spike. On 3 sides, the names of railroad officials, and on the 4th side, this sentence: may God continue the unity of our country as this railroad unites the 2 great oceans of the world. Dr. Grant?
Absolutely beautiful. And now it is my pleasure to introduce Mr. F.A. Tritle, a United States Railroad Commissioner and candidate for governor of the great state of Nevada. He will present a spike of pure silver from the famed Comstock lode on behalf of the people of Nevada. Mr. Tritle.
Thank you, Mr. Mills. To the iron of the East and the gold of the West, Nevada adds her link of silver to span the continent and web the ocean.
We are highly honored today with the presence of the Honorable Anson P.K. Safford, who is en route to Arizona as the newly appointed territorial governor. He was kind enough to delay his journey in order to make a presentation on behalf of the Arizona Territory. Governor Safford.
Ribbed with iron, clad in silver, and crowned with gold, Arizona presents her offering that has banded the continent and directed the pathway to commerce.
Governor Leland Stanford.
Gentlemen, the Pacific Railroad companies accept with pride and satisfaction these gold and silver tokens of your appreciation of the importance of our enterprise to the material interests of the whole country, north, south, east, and west. These gifts shall receive a fitting place in the superstructure of our road. But before driving the last spike in the completion of the Pacific Railroad, allow me to express the hope that the great importance which you are pleased to attach to our undertaking may be in every respect fully realized. This line of rails connecting Atlantic and Pacific and affording to commerce a new transit will prove, we trust, the speedy forerunner of increased facilities. The day is not far distant when 3 tracks shall be found necessary to accommodate the commerce and travel which shall seek transit across this continent. Freight will move only in one way on each track, to answer the demands of cheapness and time. In conclusion, I might add, we hope to do ultimately that which is now impossible on long lines, transport coarse, heavy, and cheap products at living rates to the trade.
Thank you, Governor Stanford, for your astute and timely remarks. We regret that Dr. Durant is suffering from a severe headache and has temporarily retired to his quarters. In his absence and in the absence of the President of the Union Pacific Railroad, Mr. Oliver Ames, we have asked General Grenville Dodge, Chief Engineer, to represent his railroad with a few remarks.
Mr. Mills, thank you. Gentlemen, the great senator from Missouri, Thomas Hart Benton, proposed that someday a giant statue of Columbus should be erected on the highest peak of the Rocky Mountains, pointing westward, denoting this as the great route across our continent. Today you have made that prophecy a fact. This is the way to India!
Thank you, General Dodge. Ladies and gentlemen, that moment for which you and the entire nation have been waiting. The driving of the last spike is at hand. At this time, we wish to commend both railroad companies and their workers for their efficiency and hard work in bringing this monumental undertaking to its successful fruition in a record 6½ years instead of the 12 years allotted to the venture. A final presentation will be made in the form of a silver-plated spike mall by Mr. L.W. Coe, President of the Pacific Union Express Company, after which Governor Stanford and Dr. Durant will make a few ceremonial taps on the precious metal spikes with the mall. Mr. Coe.
Railroad officials, honored guests, and friends, it is the honor of the officers and workers of the Pacific Union Railroad Company who add their congratulations upon the completion of this modern-day miracle. This silver-plated spike mall is symbolic of our good wishes.
Absolutely. At this point, I should explain that the last spike is a regular iron railroad spike that can be driven with the maul. Both the spike and the maul have been wired to the Transcontinental Telegraph line so that people everywhere can hear the blows as the spike is driven. And now, ladies and gentlemen, the moment has arrived. Boston and New Orleans have wired that they are ready and waiting. Indeed, throughout the length and breadth of the country, people everywhere are waiting at every Western Union station. As Mr. Schilling gives a signal that the last spike is driven, a magnetic ball will fall in the dome of the national capital. In San Francisco, the fire alarm bell will ring. A volley of 200 rounds will be fired in salute at Fort Point. And in Philadelphia, the Liberty Bell will ring again.
We're ready.
Promontory to the country, all ready now. Dr. Durant has adjusted the spike. The spike will soon be driven. The signal will be 3 dots for the commencement of the blows.
All right, Governor.
Oh!
Governor. You didn't do any of it. You got somebody who knows.
Perhaps we need a real railroad worker up here to make this job done. There we go. Drive her home.
Promontory to the country. Bulletin. D-O-N-E. Done.
Pacific Railroad of these United States.
Yeah.
3 cheers.
3 cheers for the Union Pacific Railroad! Hip hip! Hooray! Hip hip! Hooray! Hip hip! Hooray!
And now 3 cheers for the Union Pacific Railroad. Excuse me, Central Pacific Railroad. Hip hip! Hooray! Hip hip! Hooray! Hip hip! Hooray! You're not all hip hipping.
Promontory to the country, to President Ulysses S. Grant, Washington, D.C. Mr. President, final bulletin. The last rail is laid, the last spike is driven. The Pacific Railroad is completed to a junction 1,086 miles west of the Missouri River, 690 miles east of Sacramento City, California.
They're forward. They're going to move the locomotive.
At that moment, one era ended and another began. The Golden Spike became a symbol of hope for a better way of life with new challenges yet to be accomplished. We thank you, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, for being here today. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, a big hand for reenactment.